On count one, the racketeering conspiracy charge, Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, perhaps the most complicated charge for the jury to understand.
For months, all eyes were on Sean Diddy Combs. The streets buzzed. The media couldn't stop talking. And now, the verdict is finally in. No, Diddy isn't walking away free. But no, he won't be dying in prison either. Instead, we've landed on the most explosive split verdict in recent memory, one that may have just cracked the foundations of his billion-dollar empire forever. Let's break it all down, what the jury said, what it means, and why even a partial win still feels like a massive fall from grace. From the beginning, this wasn't just another celebrity scandal. It was a federal case built over 2 years, with evidence stretching back 2 decades. The charges? 5 federal counts, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, sex trafficking of Jane Doe, 2 counts of transportation for the purpose of prostitution under the Mann Act. If convicted on all counts, Diddy was staring down a potential life sentence, minimums of 15 years for trafficking, and up to 10 years each for the Mann Act charges. The prosecution came in hard. They painted a picture of a man who wasn't just a controlling boyfriend or a flashy mogul. They described a man who built a criminal enterprise, who used his power, wealth, and fear to manipulate women, send them across state lines, and force them into sexual acts under threat. Cassie Ventura, his ex-girlfriend of 11 years, took the stand for 4 straight days. She told jurors about being physically assaulted, being coerced into freak-offs, and having her life controlled to the point where she no longer felt like a person. Jane Doe, another former partner, testified for 6 days. She detailed similar stories: grooming, travel under false pretenses, manipulation, and the looming threat of violence. And yet, despite 34 prosecution witnesses, Diddy's legal team called zero. Their strategy? Simple. They leaned into one thing: free will. These were grown women making grown choices. The defense repeated again and again. And somehow, it worked. At least partially. On the 3rd day of deliberations, after just 15 hours of discussion, the jury, 8 men and 4 women, returned. Inside the Manhattan courtroom, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Diddy sat still, his head bowed low. His defense team stood. Reporters whispered. The judge asked for decorum as the deputy handed him the verdict. And then, the moment. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy, not guilty. Count 2, sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, not guilty. Count 3, transportation for prostitution, Cassie, guilty. Count 4, sex trafficking of Jane, not guilty. Count 5, transportation for prostitution, Jane, guilty. A mixed bag. But let's be real, this was a huge win for Diddy. He beat the most serious charges. No racketeering, no sex trafficking, no mandatory 15 to life sentence. But make no mistake, he was convicted, twice. And that changes everything. So how did Diddy walk on the trafficking charges, especially after that video of him dragging Cassie in a hotel hallway? It came down to the prosecution's attempt to prove coercion and force, not just bad behavior. To convict someone of sex trafficking under federal law, the jury must believe that the victim was forced, defrauded, or coerced into commercial sex acts. Cassie's texts, where she sometimes appeared to willingly plan freak-offs, gave the defense ammunition. The jury may have seen a toxic, abusive relationship, but not one that crossed the line into criminal trafficking. Same with Jane. She claimed she was lured into traveling for quality time, only to end up in sexual situations. But the jury apparently didn't see that as enough proof of fraud or coercion. And then there was the conspiracy charge, the racketeering. That required jurors to believe Diddy wasn't acting alone, that he used his business, assistants, staff, even security, to run an illegal enterprise. But most of those people were also legitimate employees, folks working at Combs Enterprises, Bad Boy Records, or his liquor businesses. That likely muddied the water. The jury didn't buy that this was some orchestrated criminal machine. In the end, they may have believed Diddy acted on his own, but not as a mob boss or trafficker. So why did those two Mann Act charges stick? Because those were straightforward. No need to prove force. No need to prove long-term exploitation. Just this: did you knowingly transport someone across state lines for the purpose of prostitution? The prosecution had flight records, bank statements, text messages between Diddy and male escorts, and testimony from two men who admitted they were flown in, paid in cash, and engaged in sex acts. That was enough. The jury didn't need emotional testimony or dramatic backstories. They had documents, and the documents didn't lie. So what's next for Diddy? Each conviction carries up to 10 years in federal prison. That's 20 years max, if served back to back. But most legal experts agree. He'll likely serve 2 to 5 years, especially as a first-time offender. Factors like remorse, risk to the community, and recidivism will be evaluated in a probation report before sentencing. The judge will decide, will Diddy remain free on bond until sentencing? Will he get an ankle monitor? Will he face time in a low-security facility? There's also discussion about whether he'll be allowed to return to his Miami mansion on Star Island. Either way, his legal team knows this. He dodged life, but he didn't dodge accountability. Some are calling this verdict a setback for the Me Too movement. Despite days of powerful, tearful testimony from Cassie and Jane, despite graphic stories of control, humiliation, and abuse, despite a video showing Diddy beating and dragging Cassie, the jury still didn't convict him of trafficking. Critics say this sends a chilling message that even documented abuse isn't enough if a woman stays with her abuser or texts suggest consent. One legal analyst put it bluntly: this jury didn't believe their own eyes. And others pointed to the cultural pressure, Diddy's power, his influence, his legacy, and wondered if the system once again protected a powerful man. Diddy may have avoided the worst-case scenario, but the damage is done. He is now officially a convicted felon. The music mogul who once ruled hip-hop and fashion, who mentored artists like Biggie, Mace, and Mary J. Blige, now faces brand cancellations, business losses, civil lawsuits piling up, and a permanent stain on his legacy. The civil cases are still coming, the public isn't forgetting, and even without a trafficking conviction, the world saw too much to unsee. So here we are. Diddy didn't fall, but the throne is cracked. He's not going away for life, but he's not walking away untouched. For years, he moved like a man above the law, untouchable, unchecked, unstoppable. But now, he's just another man waiting on a sentencing date, another name with a conviction attached, another powerful figure exposed by the people who once stood silently beside him. Because when the music stops, and the truth finally echoes through the courtroom, even the kings of hip-hop can't silence the verdict.